There's more than one way to build a computer, but looking at forums, Reddit, comment sections, our forums or others, overclockers, things like that, you might not know that, especially if you're a newcomer. And this is part of the PC building community that really drives me crazy. It's this attitude of elitism, as if there's only one way to do it. Certainly that's not unique to our community. I'm sure every hobby and profession has this. I'm sure music has it. I'm sure cars have it. But the idea that there's one way to do it, there's a need to appear to be the smartest person on the internet when communicating with a newcomer how to build something, and normally that involves arguing with everyone else in the thread to make sure that the newcomer understands you are in fact the alpha PC builder. And there's plenty of other problems too. The three main ones left after that would be just there's no respect for the subjective side of PC building, which coming from our channel, that's saying a lot. This idea that, again, one way to do it, your parts, it doesn't matter what you think about them, doesn't matter your personal preferences, they are wrong, and you should feel bad for choosing them, even if you've already built the system and are just posting photos to share it. That, by the way, is probably the least effective time to share criticism, but this, I guess, is a continuation of the discussion we did on why are NVIDIA and AMD so polarizing. It's not the same topic, but it's the same feel, and that's, I think for Sundays from now on, we might start pushing these types of videos where it's more of an industry look to step back from the reviews and things like that. I think the main thing I wanted to address here today is that if you're new to building computers, don't get discouraged by comments that may either be infighting between commenters who are trying to help you on some support thread, or comments that are just really heavily criticizing your own build choices. The things to look out for, of course, compatibility. If it's not compatible, yeah, you should listen to them. Performance and price, always worth looking at, but the thing is, it's not always just about price, and it's not always just about, well, you picked these parts for $1,500 and I did it better because I found the same effective performing build for $1,400. So mine's better, you should build mine. That's not really always how it works, right? There's this idea of the user experience and what are they doing with that machine. They may not have detailed all of it in the post. A lot of the times, new posters don't understand that they should say things like, I'm planning to use this for rendering. I'm planning to use this for only AAA games with the highest graphics. Planning to use this only for indie games. That doesn't always get disclosed. So probably the best first answer is, what are you using the computer for? Not, your build is bad, here's a better one, without any context for why. And I think a couple things here. I pulled out some comments. I guess we'll just go through those to get us started because it's the easiest way to show the thing that I'm talking about. Let's start with a pretty tame comment. This is a new builder named Piggynator on Build a PC. Didn't give a whole lot of info, gave a list of parts and asked if it looks okay. And the response is, one of the main responses is, you should consider a small SSD. Not a bad thing to consider. They ask, the OP asks, okay, what size do you recommend? Mad Scientist says 64 gigabyte absolute minimum, 120 to 240 if you can swing it. Okay, so not all that useful of an answer because it's basically saying any size under 512 or whatever, but it's at least a starting point because now we know, well, you shouldn't buy 32. If you're the new builder, that's kind of what your thinking is. The next reply is, I would honestly consider 250 gigabyte to be the minimum these days. Okay, so not a bad reply. Reply to that. That would be standard, not minimum. Very definitive with that period there too. And that's kind of what I'm talking about as a more tame example, because again, this is arguing over really stupid semantics at this point. Standard, not minimum. I provide something useful, right? Like if you're gonna suggest 250 gigabytes as a standard or a minimum or whatever, say why. You say something like, well, your OS tends after bloat and log files and hibernate files and all these things tends to take something like 30 gigabytes, maybe with some core applications installed. So you definitely want at least that much, but then maybe you want to leave some room for core applications, Adobe Photoshop, things like that, or your really important media files, or just because it sucks to run out of space. Something like that would be a lot more useful. And then you look at the next reply, I disagree. Okay, well, that's really helpful, thank you. Then you are out of touch. You are. Okay, so at this point, it looks like we're just kidding around, but this is really not not useful to anyone. There's no status, there's no anything behind the suggestions. It's just kind of, I don't know. But the next one, this is someone who's asking, please help me convince me stubborn family to build a PC instead of buying something. This is a whole different discussion on why pre-builds actually do have value, despite kind of this elitism that DIY is the only way to do it. That's definitely not true. And as someone who's built a lot of systems for other people, and I'm sure many of you have done the same, I understand why. If I'm building a system for a friend, as many people in this thread point out, I will now be on the line for everything bad ever that ever happens to that computer. And that means I've got to provide free tech support unless we have some kind of agreement. And so there's a reason to buy pre-built, but that's a different topic. So one of the replies here is, if they're going to view a computer as an appliance, they're going to buy pre-built. You wouldn't build a TV or a washing machine, would you? That's actually a really good analogy. I like that analogy. The reply to that, to be fair on time, building takes a few hours at most, and programs don't take more than a day. If you can't wait that long, you're very impatient. So again, I'm not really cherry picking comments. There's hundreds or if not thousands of these readily available every day on every forum, YouTube channel, everything. Very readily available, not helpful at all. And this one, this falls under my category of just really having no respect for the needs of the user. It's this idea that, well, if you can't build it, you're impatient or you're incompetent or whatever. But again, if the user in this thread especially is saying, I want to do the DIY approach, but I don't want to assemble it myself, and also I'm not going to be the one providing tech support, then yeah, they should probably do pre-built. It's not an issue of patience. It's an issue of, does it make sense? And the answer is no, not for that user. Here's another one. This falls into another category where there's no respect for this objective. So we have this user saying, thanks for getting me into the PC world. Thought I'd share my battle station 6 months in. They've got some photos of it. Looks like a pretty damn good setup for someone who's new to all of this. And of course, one of the comments that's actually upvoted is, Razer, still a lot to learn, comrade. And someone else replies, the keyboard is a complete waste of money. Membrane for $50? The fuck? And the user saying, I'm coming from only using a laptop, didn't feel like using mechanical keyboards. At least I think it was a good purchase. And that's all that matters. Nothing else really matters. If the user's happy with it, let them get it. Now, of course, there are maybe other things to consider, but those aren't the only thing to buy. So mechanical keyboards, that's another thing where, sure, $50 can get you an entry-level keyboard. Moda or something like that, whatever. Kale switches, Poseidon Z, any of those types of things, you get them for $50. But some people don't like how mechanical keyboards feel. Some people like membrane because that's what they've used forever. I know one of the EVGA employees, I had a long discussion with him at a dinner once because he was saying he really preferred the membrane keyboards and liked that new Logitech one, whatever it was in the Prodigy series, that was membrane. And I, of course, at the time, I was like, well, but it's the same price as mechanical, so help me understand why. Why do you like membrane keyboards? I want to know so that I can understand what it is that you prefer. And that's really the discussion that should be had, not you're wrong. Just, no, wrong. And of course that extends outside of the computer world, but you get what I'm trying to say. It's just respect what the other people want to use. It's really that simple. And it's not a competition, by the way. There's proving that you are the best at finding parts on the internet for prices that are whatever amount lower, or that you have a better ability to find price per performance or value for the dollar. Why? It's not a competition. There's no gain from that. All you're doing is either offending people or shooing people away from the computer community, this DIY community, where you're like, okay, well, all right, fine. I'm never posting here again. That's kind of the response that happens. Let's look at one more, or two more even. This is from our friend Paul's Hardware, one of his PC builds. You can always find the best comments on these. And this user said $230 is way too much for a motherboard for this particular build that was pretty high end. And here's the thing, again, given Paul, he knows how to build a computer. So there's no point really saying that. He knows what he wanted. And it doesn't even matter if it's Paul or not. It could be any random internet user. Posting that, one, after it's built is pointless. Doesn't help anyone. Other than maybe make them second guess their choices if they're new. That's really, again, not helpful. Two, he wanted to use it. And so what? I mean, for $230, you could get something that's got more phases for overclocking. So the VRM might be a bit stronger. They might use better FETs that aren't just the cheapest FETs in China. And can sustain more amperage going through and can help with stability, V-droop, all kinds of things. Or maybe you just get something that's got better memory support, or it's got a chipset that is more useful for the particular build. And that's another thing, like this one on the same video. The 7600K is more than enough to play any game, 1440p max settings, no point in wasting money. Here's the problem with that line of thought. This idea that, and again, another video topic here, an i5 is enough for everyone, period. It's wrong. It's not enough for everyone. People who might be doing Blender rendering, or in this case, video production, you can leverage that extra either frequency or core count or cache or whatever it may be that the particular CPU provides. And further, we saw in our own testing, like with Watch Dogs 2 in the video published yesterday or 2 days ago, that there is actually a difference between i7s and i5s in some games. Not all of them. So it is true that an i5 for a good amount of people will be fine. But for specific audiences, that i7 could matter. And just reading everywhere that an i5 is enough, and they go buy an i5 and find out, oh, I can't hit 144 hertz, and that's all I wanted, that's all I cared about, they're going to be kind of out of luck. So it's, again, this is an issue of all of this can be avoided by providing substance with what is said, of course, by shutting up when you don't know what you're talking about, which is a problem everywhere, and just generally kind of trying to understand the needs of the person, which is what, of course, professionals do. If you go to a PC building shop, hopefully they would do that for you. But the DIY approach is just flooded with all these types of comments. It's pretty disappointing. Even stuff like, there were other comments we saw on one of our builds when I did that whole render rig rebuild thing. There were comments, why not use a real open loop? Why not use a real custom loop for the system? Well, it doesn't make sense for us. It's easy to deploy an AIO in that system. I've got a lot of them. There are protections configured on the system, so if there's ever a point of failure, the system will shut itself down to protect itself because we've set a lower temperature than TJ max as a shutdown threshold, so it's fine. And these are all things that might not be disclosed, sometimes they are, and either way, there's more than one way to do it. And in that particular case, AIO is what I wanted to use. I know what I'm doing. I know what the good and the bad are of an AIO, probably better than a good amount of the comments. But, you know, it's just, that's how I wanted to build it. It was easy, it was fast, and we could deploy it immediately. That's what mattered for a production system that was down. It's not just sort of creator and media outlet comments that are frustrating. We put ourselves out there, as I've said before. You'd expect some kind of criticism, whether it's justified or mindless, if you're in that position. But for newcomers, I would like to see a bit more working together to try and figure things out than your build's wrong, his suggested build's wrong, her build's wrong, everyone's wrong, use mine, here's a link to PC Part Picker where I put it together in a few minutes because I am so damn good. So that's, again, it's frustrating. We'll probably do a couple of these videos, maybe one every Sunday or something like that. There's plenty to talk about. It's not just bones to pick with the industry, the community, but that's always the part that kind of rattles around in my head when I'm reading through all the comments. And I'm sure a lot of other people have the same frustration because a lot of them just probably don't even post comments because the greater majority of viewers and readers don't post comments. They just want to consume the content. So thank you for watching. I know it's not a review, benchmark, thing like that, but as always, we have tons of those coming up probably every single day next week, plus an Ask GN. So check back for that. Subscribe for more. Patreon link in the post-roll video to help us out directly. Links in the description below for our social media pages. There will probably not be an article on this. I'll see you all next time.